She said, "Keep the key," but I didn't know what I was unlocking. There are jobs you forget by the time you hit the next driveway, and then there are the ones that stay with you long after the tools are packed and the receipt is signed. This one didn't start out special. Just another Monday morning. Just another house. Just another lock that needed replacing. I had no idea that stepping onto her front porch would be the beginning of something that would completely upend the way I saw myself relationships and the fine line between curiosity and caution. It wasn't the house that stood out. Though yeah, it was nice. One of those modern places with giant windows and a driveway that curved like it was showing off. I pulled up thinking about lunch not life-changing moments. I didn't expect the woman who opened the door to look like she stepped out of a high-end magazine. And I definitely didn't expect her to smile at me like she already knew something I didn't. She said her name was Tessa, and right away it felt like the kind of moment that doesn't usually happen to guys like me. I'm not some smooth talker. I don't wear a button-down to work or drive a fancy truck. I fix things. I show up on time. I don't expect more than a check and maybe a thank you at the end of the day. But Tessa was different. She didn't just give me directions, she lingered when she spoke. She didn't just walk through the house, she floated like every step had been choreographed. She said she had a break-in scare and wanted new locks installed. Simple, clear, business. So I got to work. I thought the most unusual thing about that day would be how quiet the house was, how spotless, how everything seemed curated. I was wrong, because just as I was about to hand her the final invoice, she looked me in the eyes, really looked, and said, "Maybe you should keep a key too." And just like that, the air changed. That single sentence turned an ordinary job into something that would unravel me slowly. I didn't know if it was a joke, a test, or a flirtation I wasn't ready for. But what I did know, what I felt in my gut, was that nothing about this was simple anymore. And if I walked down that path, I wouldn't come out the same on the other side. The moment she slipped that key into my pocket, I felt it like a spark, small, almost weightless, but charged. She didn't make a show of it. No wink, no seductive lean-in, just a soft, knowing look and that casual gesture, the kind that only someone with complete confidence could pull off without saying another word. I stood there, frozen, my mind racing. I'd done hundreds of jobs before: clogged drains, broken windows, jammed doors, but no client had ever handed me a key. Not like that, not without a single form to fill out, not with that kind of smile. She didn't say anything else after that, just turned, walked toward the living room, and let the silence settle between us like fog. I gathered my tools, packed everything up in near silence, and left without saying much more than, "Thanks again." The whole drive home, my thoughts swirled like a storm. What did it mean? Was she being friendly? Testing me? Was it some bizarre power move? The key sat in my pocket like it had a pulse. I couldn't bring myself to toss it in the trash or even leave it on my kitchen counter. Instead, I placed it carefully in the top drawer of my nightstand, like it might wake me up in the middle of the night and demand an answer. I didn't sleep well that night. The image of her standing in that sunlit hallway, the soft scent of vanilla in the air, the sound of jazz faintly drifting from the other room, it looped in my mind like a film reel. I was restless, caught somewhere between intrigue and a low, simmering guilt I couldn't explain. The next few days were filled with mindless work. I sanded a warped cabinet door, installed a bathroom vanity, rewired a busted outlet in a cramped kitchen. But through it all, Tessa hovered just outside my thoughts. A ghost I couldn't forget. I'd open my toolbox and pause, thinking about her voice. I'd see brushed nickel hardware and remember the way she watched me work. Even music playing from someone's radio on a job site would jolt me. Her jazz still lingering in my memory. I wanted to shake it off, so I told myself it didn't mean anything. Just a flirty rich woman playing games because she was bored. She probably forgot all about me the second I left. She probably gave a key to every delivery guy, handyman, or gardener who smiled politely and said, "Ma'am, I wasn't special. I was just next." But then, why did it feel so specific? Why did her tone sound like an invitation without saying so? 2 weeks passed before I broke. I sat in my truck in between 2 appointments, staring at my phone. Her name, Tessa Locks, stared back at me from the contact list. I hadn't even renamed her. I didn't know how to. My thumb hovered over the screen. Just a quick text. Just to check in. See if everything's okay. That's what I told myself. I typed, "Hi, it's Gavin. Just wanted to check if the new locks are holding up okay." I stared at the message for a good 5 minutes before I hit send. Then I braced myself for nothing. For silence. For a polite, detached response. Something that would close the door I never should have peeked into. But her reply came fast. "They're perfect. But I was starting to think you'd never text." My breath caught. I didn't even have time to formulate a response before the next message appeared. "If you're not too busy, why don't you come by?" That was it. No pressure, no demand, just an opening. I sat, gripping the steering wheel, caught in a swirl of logic and instinct. I could have ignored it. I could have deleted the messages and gone to my next job. But instead, I drove. I didn't even realize I was headed back to our neighborhood until I was halfway there. The gate opened like it remembered me. Her house looked even more perfect the second time. The light hit the windows in just the right way, casting warm glows into the front foyer. I walked up to the door with my heart pounding, the key still tucked away in that drawer at home. I didn't use it. I rang the bell. Tessa answered in jeans and a cozy gray sweater, her hair down around her shoulders this time. Casual. Comfortable. Like we weren't in the middle of a story that had no script. "I was wondering if you'd ever come back," she said with a smirk. "I had to know what you meant." That day, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. She stepped aside and motioned me in. Inside the house felt even warmer. Candles flickered on a console table near the hallway. A faint scent of cedar wood mixed with something soft and sweet. We sat in her kitchen, big marble island, 2 bar stools. She poured coffee like it was the most natural thing in the world. And we talked. About the weather, work, gardens, Iowa winters, everything except what we both knew we were really there to talk about. After a while, she studied me quietly. "You really didn't use the key?" I shook my head. I couldn't. It didn't feel right. Her smile grew wider. "That says a lot about you." We kept talking until the coffee turned cold. Then she opened a cabinet and pulled out a bottle of red wine. "Would you rather—" I hesitated. Just for a second. "Sure," I said. And just like that, we crossed another invisible line. We moved to the living room. She put on music, something soft, old-school saxophone heavy. We drank. We laughed. And the distance between us on that cream-colored couch kept shrinking. She told me about restoring houses, about getting burned in love, about how being independent meant more silence than she expected. I told her about growing up around construction, about my dad, about how proud I was of starting something from scratch, even if it wasn't flashy. She listened. No interruptions, no fake sympathy. "You're not trying to impress me," she said after a long pause. "You're just you, and that's rare." There it was again, that slow pull, the gravity. By the end of the night, I stood to leave. She walked me to the door. Before I stepped out, she touched my arm and said quietly, "The offer still stands." I nodded, not sure if I should feel honored or terrified. The key was still back in the drawer at home, but it felt like a question now, a choice. And I already knew I wasn't done with her. The days that followed that second visit blurred together. Work became routine again, tightening fixtures, climbing into attics to reroute insulation, patching worn-out drywall. But inside, I wasn't the same. I'd cross town to fix a squeaky cabinet in a rental property and find myself replaying her voice in my head. I'd drive past hardware stores and imagine her reflection in the living room mirror, the way she tilted her head when I spoke. I didn't tell anyone. Not my buddy Joel, who would have dragged me to the bar to talk it out. Not my dad, who would have sniffed out something off with just one look. Not even my own reflection got the truth. I played it cool on the surface, but my chest buzzed with tension every time I heard my phone vibrate. My fingers would hesitate above her name, then pull away. 4 days passed. No calls, no texts, just that restless energy building like pressure behind drywall waiting to crack. On the 5th evening, her message came. Tessa Locks. I'm opening a bottle of wine tonight. No pressure, just company. Doors open, short, casual. But it hit like a freight train. I didn't respond. Not right away. I sat in my truck in the dark outside a fast food drive-thru, staring at the glowing screen. I told myself a dozen things. She's just lonely. This is a bad idea. You'll regret this. But I didn't drive home. I didn't even finish my burger. Instead, I drove to her house. I didn't ring the bell this time. I stood on her porch, staring at the door like it might open itself. The key was still back in my drawer, but not that night. That night, I'd brought it with me. It felt heavier now, like it knew something I didn't. I slid it into the lock, hesitated for half a breath, and turned. The soft click echoed louder than I expected. Inside, the scent of vanilla and cedar hit me again. Soft jazz floated from hidden speakers. Tessa stepped into view from the hallway barefoot, wearing dark leggings and an oversized cream sweater that slipped off one shoulder. "You used the key?" she said gently, like she'd been waiting for that moment. I nodded, closed the door behind me, and said the only thing I could think of, I wasn't sure if I should. "I'm glad you did." She handed me a glass of wine like we were just picking up a conversation we never finished. No tension, no questions. That night stretched out like a silk ribbon. We talked more than anything else about people, about music, about how both of us hated small talk, but somehow couldn't stop talking now. At one point, she laughed so hard at one of my handyman horror stories that she snorted, and we both cracked up like teenagers. I didn't leave that night. Or the next. We fell into a rhythm that scared me. Monday through Friday, I was Gavin the handyman, the guy who carried a toolbox, who said yes ma'am, and sent digital invoices. But Friday night through Sunday morning, I was hers. She never said it out loud, and I never asked, but it felt like a second life. I'd pull up to her house with groceries or wine or nothing but a smile. We'd eat takeout binge old black and white movies or sit by the fireplace with no words, just her head on my shoulder. It wasn't just sex, though that was there too. It was something quieter, deeper. The way she poured coffee in the morning. The way she left a folded towel on the counter when I showered. The way she never made me feel like I was a visitor, even when I was. But something always felt borrowed. Like I was wearing clothes that weren't mine. Little things chipped at me. She had no family pictures on the walls. Her phone never buzzed, never rang, never lit up with anything unexpected. Her past was a blank canvas she never painted on. If I asked too much, she'd dodge with a joke or a soft smile. Then there were the artifacts, men's things. A watch in her drawer, a pair of leather shoes shoved in the hall closet, a shaving kit tucked behind towels. I asked once. She shrugged. Old boyfriend. Left in a rush. I just never tossed them. I wanted to believe her. I did believe her until I didn't. One Saturday morning, I woke up before her. I slipped out of bed and wandered the hallway. I wasn't snooping. I was searching for reassurance. For anything. That's when I found the envelope, tucked in a drawer beside a stack of bills. A travel itinerary. Name David Monroe. Round trip. From Denver. Arrival Tuesday. Departure undecided. I felt the blood drain from my face. I didn't confront her right away. I folded it back carefully and placed it exactly where I found it. But something inside me shifted. That easy warmth I felt around her. It got colder. Not frozen, but just cold enough to make me shiver, even when the room was warm. That Tuesday, I didn't text her. I waited. And sure enough, she didn't text either. 2 days passed. Then a week. Radio silence. Until Friday night. The text hit my phone like a slap. Tessa Locks. Don't come over tonight. My husband is in town. Husband. Not boyfriend. Not ex. Husband. I stared at the word until my hands shook. All the quiet, unspoken suspicions slammed into place like puzzle pieces I never wanted to see fit. I had been a secret, a fill-in, a backup plan, a fantasy for her, and a mistake for me. I didn't call, I didn't reply, I didn't scream or cry or rage. I blocked her number, deleted her messages. Then I went home and pulled that key from my jacket pocket. It felt colder now, even under warm fingers. I held it, staring at the thing that had changed my life with nothing more than a whisper and a smile. Then I dropped it into the trash. For the first time in weeks, I slept like a stone. The following days were brutal, not because I missed her, though I did, but because I hated myself for needing her. Work helped. I threw myself into it like a man possessed. New clients, early mornings, late evenings. I went back to Joel's apartment on weekends. I answered my dad's calls again. I stopped flinching when I saw jazz playlists pop up on my Spotify feed, but there was a scar now. Not a wound, a scar. Something healed, but still tender. People started to notice. "You seem different," Joel said one night over beers. "I'm older," I replied. "You were already old." I smiled. He didn't ask more. He didn't have to. Eventually, even the pain faded. But what stayed was the memory of how easy it was to fall into someone's arms without knowing where you'd land, of how quiet betrayal could be, of how one little key, shiny, silver, and innocent, could unlock something dangerous you didn't know you were walking into. I never saw Tessa again, never drove by her house, never searched her name online or looked her up late at night. She disappeared from my life like fog off a mirror, and I let her. Because sometimes the hardest lesson isn't learning to let go, it's realizing that you should have never held on in the first place. I didn't expect to hear from her again, but about a month after everything fell apart, after the text about her husband, after I threw away the key, after I'd buried the pain under drywall dust and late-night exhaustion, her name popped up in my inbox. Not a text. An email. The subject line was simple. "I'm sorry. I almost deleted it without opening it. But curiosity is a strange thing. Even when you think you've healed, it only takes one whisper from the past to crack the surface." The message wasn't long. "Gavin, you don't owe me a response. You don't even have to read this. I just needed to say something. You were kind. You were honest. You were exactly what I didn't deserve. And I'm sorry for pulling you into something that wasn't fair to you. David and I haven't been happy for a long time. He travels often, and when he's home, it's like walking on glass. I never meant to hurt you, but I know I did. Please take care of yourself. Tessa." I read it once, then again. Then I closed my laptop and sat in silence. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. Instead, I stood up, grabbed my toolbox, and left for a service call. A small job tightening a warped cabinet door in a modest home on the edge of town. The woman who greeted me at the door was in her late 50s with warm eyes and a slight limp. She explained that her husband had passed 2 years earlier, and she was slowly learning to fix things herself but couldn't get the cabinet to stay straight. As I worked, she brought me iced tea and asked questions about how long I'd been doing this. I told her bits of my story. She listened like I mattered, and when I finished, she paid in cash and said something I hadn't expected. "Thank you, Gavin. Not just for the cabinet, for being decent." That one sentence unraveled something tight in my chest. Maybe I'd needed to hear it from someone, anyone, that I hadn't been a fool. That decency still counted even if it didn't win in the short term. I started doing more community work after that. A few odd jobs at the local shelter. A free ceiling fan install for the elementary school. Small things. Quiet things. But they helped. They reminded me that my life wasn't defined by what happened behind Tessa's doors. It was defined by what I chose to build after. Still, I'd be lying if I said I forgot her completely. She'd show up in my dreams now and then, walking barefoot into a sunlit kitchen, handing me a glass of wine like nothing had ever gone wrong. Sometimes I woke up smiling, sometimes I woke up angry. Always I woke up alone. It was months before I told anyone about her. I was out fishing with Joel when it slipped out. We were sitting on the tailgate watching the water, and he asked if I was seeing anyone. "No," I said, and then added, "But there was someone." He waited, so I told him the whole thing, every twist and turn, every moment I'd buried. He didn't say anything for a while. Then he cracked a beer and handed me one. "You fell hard," he said. "Yeah," She used you? Yeah. But you got out. Barely. He nodded. Still counts. We didn't talk about it again. But that moment, that quiet acknowledgement from someone who knew me, that helped more than he knew. Eventually, I upgraded my truck. Business had picked up. Word of mouth, good reviews, repeat clients. People liked me because I showed up on time, didn't upsell, and followed through. It was simple, honest work, the kind that left you sore, but satisfied. One afternoon, I was installing new shelves in a woman's walk-in closet when her teenage daughter peeked in. "Are you the guy who helped fix the animal shelter last winter?" she asked. "I guess so," I said. She grinned. "My aunt volunteers there. She said you didn't even charge." I just smiled. Felt like the right thing to do. As I drove home that day, it hit me I was finally okay. Not perfect, not untouched, but okay. I could walk into a home without scanning for someone else's secrets. I could laugh with a client without wondering if I'd end up in their bed. I had made it through the fire. One night, about a year after it all ended, I drove by her neighborhood, not on purpose, just a job nearby. As I passed the tree-lined road, I slowed down. The house was still there, same manicured lawn, same big windows, but no signs of her, no candles glowing, no music playing. I didn't stop, didn't turn my head. I kept driving. The chapter had closed, and this time I wasn't tempted to reopen it. It's strange how something so small a key can open not just a door, but an entire world you didn't see coming. When I think back to that afternoon standing on Tessa's porch, the weight of that silver key in my pocket, I realize now it wasn't about the lock. It was about crossing a threshold I wasn't ready for. About walking into a story that didn't belong to me, even if it felt like it did in the moment. I wanted connection. I got chaos. I wanted something real. I got something hidden. But I don't regret it. Not anymore. Because through all of it, the temptation, the confusion, the heartbreak, I learned who I was when the room went quiet, when the truth hit hard, when no one was watching. And maybe that's what growth looks like. Not perfect endings, not dramatic resolutions, but choosing not to use the key the next time someone hands it to you without a reason. These days, I keep my pockets light. No extra keys, no unanswered questions. Just tools I know how to use and boundaries I've built with my own hands. If you've ever been someone's secret, if you've ever handed over your trust and watched it get tossed aside, I hope you know it doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. What matters is what you do next. Will you keep walking into rooms where you don't belong? Or will you finally close the door and build something better on your own terms? So now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been part of someone's secret life? Have you ever crossed a line you never thought you would just because you wanted to feel seen? Tell us in the comments. You're not alone, and if this story hit home for you, do me a favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that self-worth isn't found behind someone else's locked door. This is where we don't just tell stories. We unlock the truth.